My name is Hannah. When my father called me from his hospital bed, he begged me to forgive the woman who had raised me. He insisted Diane had sacrificed everything for a child that wasn't hers. 2 days later, my DNA results revealed the impossible. Diane wasn't my stepmother at all. She was my biological mother, and my entire life had been built on a carefully protected lie. I grew up believing my mother, Melissa, died in a car accident when I was 5. My father married her sister, Diane, less than a year later. Diane cared for me efficiently, packed lunches, school conferences, an immaculate house, but she corrected anyone who dared call her my mother. "I am her aunt and her stepmother," she'd say. Her real mother was Melissa. My younger brother received warmth that seemed to come to her effortlessly. My artwork went into a drawer, his stayed on the fridge. When I once asked her if she loved me, she told me love was proven through responsibility, not emotion. My father always said I should simply be grateful that Diane had sacrificed her own plans to raise her sister's child. That sentence built the exact shape of my shame for decades. That strange hospital conversation stayed with me for days. Then, almost by coincidence, a genealogy kit I'd mailed off months earlier finally returned results. A man named Peter Shaw appeared as my full maternal uncle. Peter was Diane's only brother, and genetically, that could only mean Diane herself was my biological mother, not my aunt. Stay with me, because the phone call I made next completely rewrote everything I thought I knew about my own birth. I called Peter, who'd been estranged from the family for decades. He wasn't surprised at all. He asked simply, "Did Diane finally tell you herself?" Then he told me the truth the family had buried for 35 years. Diane had gotten pregnant at 17 by my father, who was 28 and already engaged to Melissa. Their parents considered it a scandal severe enough to destroy both families. Melissa, who had struggled with infertility, agreed to claim the baby as her own after a quiet move to another state. My father then married Melissa and raised me publicly as their shared child. Diane was told she could remain in my life only as an aunt. Years later, after Melissa died, she finally married my father, but the cover story never changed. Peter still had letters Diane had written from the maternity home. In the earliest ones, she called me my little girl and begged her own parents to let her keep me. In the later letters, the language shifted completely. She wrote that Melissa was stealing her future, that my father wouldn't leave his engagement no matter what. One letter, written after Melissa's death, read, "Now they expect me to raise Hannah and pretend I did not already lose everything because of her." Reading that, I understood Diane had both loved and deeply resented me before I could even speak a word. I obtained my original adoption file through an attorney. It confirmed everything and listed Diane clearly as my birth mother. My father had signed every document. For 35 years, he'd watched me ask why she couldn't love me, all while knowing the entire question was built on a lie he'd helped construct. I visited him again once he'd stabilized. Diane sat beside his bed. I placed the DNA report and the adoption file on his tray without a word. Neither of them asked what the documents were. Diane started crying almost immediately. My father said they'd planned to tell me when I was older, then after college, then after I married. Every delay protected some new event, some new version of the story they preferred. I asked Diane why she'd spent my whole childhood insisting I wasn't hers. She admitted she'd feared I would reject her completely if I ever learned she'd once given me away. So she rejected me first. Slowly, for 35 straight years. Among Peter's papers was a journal Melissa had kept during my early childhood. She wrote about guilt, about fearing Diane would try to reclaim me, but also with real tenderness about my first words, the way I always slept with one hand open. This wasn't a simple story of one villain. Melissa had genuinely loved me while participating in taking me from a frightened teenage mother. Diane had been coerced, then grew cruel because of it. My father held the most actual power and told himself silence protected everyone. It never had. I chose not to change my legal records. Melissa remained, in every real sense, the mother who raised me. Diane became my biological mother, a relationship that would be decided in the present, never simply guaranteed by DNA alone. She wanted me to call her mom immediately. I refused. Biology explained our history. It didn't repair it. We began therapy with clear conditions. She had to answer my questions honestly, without ever saying the past was just different back then. My father, in his own sessions, finally admitted that marrying Diane after Melissa's death let him quietly place every consequence onto two sisters instead of himself. We didn't grow close quickly. There were months where therapy made things harder because every memory suddenly needed relabeling. But Diane apologized, eventually, for specific moments, correcting teachers who'd called me her daughter, leaving my photo off the family wall. Those specific apologies mattered more than any general sorrow ever could. On my 42nd birthday, she gave me the very first letter she'd written after my birth. "This belongs to you," she said, including the parts that make me look young, frightened, and selfish. I still call her Diane. Sometimes I reach for another name and then I stop myself. She never pressures me either way. My father died 18 months after the truth came out. Before that, he recorded a full account for the family and apologized to Peter, to Diane, and to me. It didn't repair my childhood, but it kept the secret from ever quietly passing to another generation. Today, I know that biology explains our past, but trust is only ever built by truth. Discovering the secret didn't erase the pain, but it finally let me stop blaming myself for a childhood that was never my fault to begin with. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to Unheard Drama Stories for more emotional family dramas and the unforgettable betrayals hiding behind them.